to be able to just go out and practice and try to address some of our the weaknesses, the strengths we have, and try and get better. Iowa was not a good game. Any of you watched it? It was probably our worst performance of the year. Certainly our worst performance of the year. Maybe our worst defensive performance in over a year. I don't know. Maybe go back to Nebraska game at Nebraska last year. It was very similar. I think we were 13.5. Iowa's done that to us several times over our visits there, and they did it again. So we were going to have to just, we have to learn from it. We got to get better, but we made so many defensive mistakes, and it did not bode well. And then offensively, we were as inept as we've been a couple other times this year. And we just got to keep working and find better ways to get better shots, and then we're going to make shots too. So, you go from that, and you go to Rutgers, which hangs its head on defense, and it hangs its hat on defense, and that's going to be really hard to score. So each time I know we've gone to Rutgers, we were fortunate enough to win, and every game was just a gut-wrenching down to the last second, the ball bounced our way and we won. So it's going to be very similar like that. We got to do the best we can and work more at. Yesterday was very rare. We're going to spend a lot of time on Rutgers. Yesterday was all about Michigan, making Michigan, not all, 80% of Michigan, making us better, getting back to individual development and stressing that more because it wasn't showing in games. So it's going to be tough. Our schedule is just going to be incredible. If you're just watching the league scores, and watching the scores around the country. There's some crazy things that happen at this time of the year, and you just got to plow through them and look at the future and try and get better.
All right.
John, there's been several players that have been in kind of a shooting slump lately, especially Jordan. Is there anything you're doing to try to get them past that?
Well, one of Jordan's issues was where he was shooting. He was open, but he didn't need to be standing at the NBA line to shoot him. He's got to continue to move in closer to the line, and his shooting numbers in practice drills and things like that, which are harder than games, are incredible. But he also shoots at the line. He's shooting 5 feet beyond the line more often, all the time, and he needs to just keep moving in. So that's why a lot of people don't make it in the NBA, because they can't shoot from the NBA line, and that's where he's shooting from. So he's got to move in. Eventually, he'll probably be able to shoot from the NBA line, but it's not where we practice.
Jay?
John, it seems that Steve's been building something slowly but surely at Rutgers. Last year they made that short tournament run. This year they won 3 conference games for the first time in the Big Ten. When you look at them
3 in a row.
Or yeah, 3 in a row. But when you look at them on tape, what have they done that's really improved them to this point where, they're doing a lot better than they have in the past few seasons? Well,
the one constant that they have at all 3 seasons is their defense, and I think they also ended Ohio State's season 2 years ago as well, and they just have a defensive presence, the bodies, the rebounding. That it takes time to grow that. It takes time to grow your culture, and you got to have some breaks. They've lost a lot of close games over the years as well. So it's a program that is certainly moving in the right direction. But as I've said to many of you before, in this league, other teams have to go in the other direction for you to go in the right direction. It's not always, you can't always control that. There's 14 other teams that give scholarships too, that get really good coaches and are trying to win. So it's really hard to build the programs these days when you start at the bottom like Steve has.
And I assume at some point you saw that Trey, Tim, and Nick all got traded.
Yeah, all within a couple of days, yeah.
What advice would you give them as they kind of keep moving around?
Well, I did give them, I text all of them and just say new opportunity for you guys to just, sudden change, we use that term all the time, Bo's term, sudden change, a new opportunity for you. And I'm sure that they will do their best. I heard from Rick Carlisle as well. So I think everybody's, after the initial shock, these guys are now, sort of settled in. Trey's married. Tim's been in New York for 2 years. Nick has settled in on the West Coast, and all of a sudden that changes. I asked Terry Mills about that, and I think he said to me, I got traded in Jersey in the middle of the year, and he told the coach, yeah, I'll be there in a couple of days. He said, no, you're being here in 24 hours. And it's just a shock to their bodies of what they have to go through. But I'm glad to have Nick back east. I'm thrilled that both Tim and Trey can play with for a guy, and there's nothing wrong with the Knicks situation other than the injuries have hurt them, but they're a little closer right now than the Knicks are, and maybe they get into the playoffs. I think it can really help them.
Coach, we know where you stand on the 2-foul thing in the first half,
Yeah.
but when you've got guys like Isaiah and John both in foul trouble and nobody else stepping up maybe at the 5, is that something that you would consider maybe doing?
Yeah, I think we did it. We played
Yeah.
Iggy with 2.
Okay.
We
Yep.
played Iggy with 2 because we felt the game could get away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And, our issue wasn't, that's not the issue. Our issue
Yep.
is the way we got those 2 fouls. We had JP and Isaiah had really poor fouls to start the game. We fouled them and something, I say on the board every day, avoid bad fouls. And we went out and here's what the bad, I'm going to make a bad foul. That's a big point of it. But yeah, I think if you're close, you don't go there. You don't go there. You saw how did it work out for Romeo Langford at
Right.
Indiana when he played there. You can't trust your player because he's playing, and you can't trust the officials because sometimes it's just going to be a 50-50 call. You just can't trust it. And now you got him out the whole time. The whole second half, you have no chance. And you don't think the other coach knows, he's in foul trouble, I'm driving him. So you say, okay, I'm not going to, but he's not playing any defense. He's not going to play any defense while he's got 2 fouls on. So what's the point? So, but the depth, our lack of, let's just say that the bench did not play well.
Yep.
And the bench needs to play well, and they did not.
And then how's John's foot?
Yeah, there's no issues.
Okay, good deal.
He didn't play the other night. We had 6 minutes with our starting lineup
Yep.
on the floor. Self-inflicted. 6 minutes with our starting lineup on the floor. Tough for us to win.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder about Castleton's 2 minutes at the end of the first half. There were 4 defensive possessions.
Yep.
I watched them in slow motion today. I thought 3 of them were really good, and one I'm not sure.
When he went for the block and he should have stayed at home.
He
Yeah.
stayed with
Yeah.
this guy.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So I wonder how he's coming along, and I guess a team like Iowa, where he gives you a little more length,
Yeah.
whether that's a more viable option.
He's under consideration. Right? He said we're looking at the depth of it. I just ordered up the cumulative stats of the entire every scrimmage, Europe, so I can just look at it and say, okay, the other kids haven't had the opportunities in games. They've had opportunities in practice, obviously. And let me look at some more numbers to see who should be playing, right? Given where we are right now, with the bench has been inconsistent.
Thanks.
Andrew?
Do you typically script the set number of offensive plays to start a game? Or?
I used to do more of that. I don't do as much because of it's been a waste of time. Because when we go in there, we're not getting what we expect. We went in and they came out switching every screen the first few times, right? We never would have predicted that. Right, and then with them, they're going to change defenses so much. You try to get offenses in the first half that are really multidimensional. They're just going to attack and play. And we had some really good shots in the first half. We just didn't make hardly. Iggy made a few. Nobody else could make an open shot. And then and we missed 2 layups as well. And then the second half, I can script more because I can see it. I'm not script it. I can call it, so I don't need to script it.
And then against the 2-3 zone, I mean, is it a hard and fast rule for you to want the ball to get to that high post in the middle, or is that not necessarily?
It depends how that back man is playing. Is he coming up or is he going back? And we can throw it into John Teskey at the foul line anytime we want to, but we don't, and we need to. And that's what we were trying to emphasize during the time. And then we like the ball screen. And then we like to play high-low, or it gets people into shifts. So our offensive zone numbers actually were really good going into that game. They weren't so good in that game.
Tim?
John, for Iggy, he's been making his threes the last 3 games. He shot well from 3. Before that, he had a little bit of a slump from 3. How much does that affect how teams play him in terms of what he can do off the drive when he's making his threes?
Yeah, I think everybody doesn't look at I get the last 5 stats. Right now, I'm looking at conference stats only, right? What are they doing in the conference? Because now there's enough data there. And if you look at his body of work, you would never say, hey, he had a slump at one time. He had a few games just like everybody does where the ball didn't go in, but he still did other things. So I don't think there's any effect there. And really with anybody, you're only as good as your last miss, your next make, and you just play from there, right? Go ahead.
Do you think it affects how teams play him when he has those shots that just aren't falling for whatever reason?
I mean, it's going to be up to every coach how they're going to do that. I'm always looking at the body of the work. I'm looking at foul shooting, right? You see a kid, somebody that's like, he's been hot, but it doesn't seem like that's right. And then you look, he's shooting 60% from the foul line. He's probably not a real shooter. And we might say, well, let's make him make one or two before we change how we guard him. But most people, we sort of have enough knowledge of them. They've been there a couple of years, and we know how we're going to play them. Iggy, probably people are still trying to figure that out. I know I would guard him. I would stay on him. He's a really good shooter. He was the only guy who could make shots for us the other night.
James?
For a while in the first half. Yep.
I guess what were you most disappointed with in the defensive performance?
We gave up 3 wide open threes. I mean, they only got 6, which was probably they make 7 or 8 maybe, and we thought that was key to take 3 away. And we gave them 3, and it was just like I said switch, but you didn't hear me, or you said switch and I didn't hear you. It was mind-boggling what happened, and it just happens sometimes, and it's happened there a lot. And for some reason, I can still see right now, like Nick Stauskas and Glenn Robinson missing a switch and them getting a layup, just like we just saw it. I mean, it happens over and over again. It's the speed of the action that they run, and they always have shooters out on the floor. But those 3 threes that we gave up to the 2 big guys and to Bohannon, when we just all went with something else and left the shooter open, it was mind-boggling at the time. But it happens, and our kids look at it and say, wow, we really goofed. I got to listen better, or I got to talk louder.
Some guys, after the Wisconsin loss, in a close loss, they talk about they can learn shot selection and clock management down the stretch. I mean, in a game where you kind of get pounded, I guess what can guys learn?
Thanks for being so nice, pounded. Thank you.
Whatever.
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Now, we got it back. You know, it was 7, 8 points
You got
ready to
5
go.
and then-
I wouldn't say pounded, but we did get beat. We did
like
get
double
beat.
digits most of
Yeah,
the
yes. But we are, our kids learned, but I showed them yesterday, it was 38 points, which we could change if we just did the right thing. 38 points swing in, for example, not talking loud enough or listening well enough on a switch, walling up on a guy's layup instead of reaching in right at the end and putting them at the foul line. John Teskey doing this on the first play. You can control all these things. We can't get guys to jump higher or grow 5 inches in the next week. We can get them to understand those things, and that was the most difficult. That was what was hard to understand from a team that was supposed to be good defense. It wasn't in this game in any way. So it happens.
John, with the bench, you mentioned the bench earlier. Say, well, beyond the top 6, you did get some of them in there. Colin played, David played, that don't normally get those minutes.
Yeah.
You threw them out there and see what they could do. I mean, does it encourage you or push you to throw them more, or try to develop?
Yeah, I don't know. I do not know. I do not want to just experiment with them in the games when we don't need to, but when we needed to. And I don't buy into, hey, they're gamers. And when I see it every day in practice, I see it every day in practice, and so I want to see more in practice. But there's going to be those opportunities, and whoever gets it done, all right, he is a gamer, right? But I haven't seen a gamer yet. Even when there was 5 minutes, I haven't seen it yet, and that's what we're hoping that we will see either in practice or when they do have those opportunities, whether it's hopefully not an injury. We're so blessed there, but in that foul trouble, right, our guys have had time to show what they can do, and really what we have shown is all young guys. That's the difference with our depth and other people's depth. Iowa's depth. When Iowa went to their bench, there was 4 out of, I think maybe one guy was a freshman, right, McCafferty, when they went to their bench. When we go to our bench, it is basically we're putting our freshmen in there, and they, they're going to mix up switches. It can cost you in games.
Do you get a sense that that situation happening was maybe a wake up for maybe young guys to say, hey, this can't happen?
Yeah, I would hope so. I would hope so. Show you how little that they know when they came down and they were going to dribble the ball out when we were down in the game. That was a first. Actually, I think it was a second. I think I have seen it once before. So it just shows that in that game, their minds are still got to be developed, and that's my job to get that done.
John, with
Charles and Jordan, I think in the last 3 games combined, they have 6 assists. Is that a product of guys not getting shots? Is it a product of them not facilitating enough? How do you view the creation of those two?
Well, in the game yesterday, I mean, they made several really good plays, right plays, and guys didn't finish it. And whether X had a tough day shooting, we missed a couple layups. That happens. I think that they've really grown in that area, and our assist numbers as a team are not down. Our assist numbers at spots other than Xavier Simpson are way down. But I actually made a note to myself to look at Trey Burke's assists when he was playing with Stu and Zach Novak, right, and Timmy. I think he was like way up and everybody else was down. But we've had, like last year, to have Muhammad with 135 assists, and Charles had 90. He had almost 2.5 a game, so almost 3 a game. So there's got to be some give and take there. That yes, we're not making shots. Like you look at our shooting percentage, we're shooting 31% from 3 last year. We shot 37% from 3 in the league. So there is some both of those. But we're trying to make the next play, and they're not selfish, right? They just are still understand what is the right play, and we got to continue to stress that.
John, you mentioned before the issue with Jordan being a couple steps further out than you want him. Is that strictly a habit that he can correct, or is there something that's facing?
It's a hard thing. There's some players that their GPS, it just takes time to adjust it. I mean, they just have this feel of where they should be, and it's really hard. Yesterday we had DeAndre standing on the sideline right behind Jordan, attacking his zone and making sure and just pushing him if he was out at all. I mean, seriously. And he's not saying, heck with you, coach, I'm going to stand over here. It's the GPS thing of people will go through. I've had several players in the past, when we did not make the NCAA tournament in 14-15, we had several players that would just go out in the baskets there and they'd guard a guy sideways and the guy would go lay it in. And it was the hardest thing to just say, your GPS should tell you where the basket is, and they didn't feel it. And that's where we're trying to get Jordan to just really feel where he should be against those. But he's a 33% shooter from the NBA line right now. But he's a 45% shooter from the college line, because that's where we practice. I think yesterday he might have made, in a drill where he's running and he might have made 20 out of 25 threes, but they were all at the line. Xavier did the same thing. Xavier shot long threes when he didn't have to. So
we got time for
we learn from it in the video. They see where they are on the line.
A few more. We'll go Andrew and then Zach.
I wonder what it's like when you go on the road and other writers are asking you about building a program and a culture and things like that. I imagine it's not too long ago. It feels like you were doing that, but now you're kind of at the top of the league. What is it like when?
Well, I tell everybody that the one thing you have to remember is people have to go down for you to go up. It's not just about that. And when was the last time that you saw some of the programs, Michigan State and Wisconsin are great examples, that Wisconsin last year, right? But other than that, Wisconsin hadn't been, Michigan State hasn't been down in this century, certainly, right? There's some programs that are not going to do that. We want to be one of those programs. But there's only 14, now there's 14 teams. There's not 11 like I came in here. So it's really hard to get to this top 5 or 6 that can go to the NCAA tournament. That's how we're all going to be measured, aren't we? Are we going to the tournament? So I know some programs aren't going to see themselves unsuccessful if they never win a Big Ten championship. But if they're in the NCAA tournament every year, they'll probably feel that they turned a corner. It's just hard to do. But the only way you can do is do what you did where you came from, build a good culture, get the right kids, try to get a situation where you have some type of familiar. You're not just every year you're rebuilding your team. If you can find the magic in that of not being a rebuild every year because 1 or 2 injuries and all of a sudden you're not very good. In this league, you're not very good. If you have injuries and you're rebuilding constantly, you saw what happened to us when we had to rebuild in 14-15.
Zach, you want to close this out?
Go ahead. One more for Andrew.
All right. Is Charles 100%?
Yeah.
Healthy?
Yeah.
John, you mentioned shot selection a few
times the past couple weeks as far as thing holding the offense back. How do you approach that with players who maybe have shots that they like but aren't statistically working or things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line between just going by the statistics and then who they really are, what you really see. So we're trying to just get them to, well, this is, we're noticing right now, some of you are shooting on the move, you're not nearly as good as when you're stepping. You are, well, I mean, we know that they got to recognize that. And so, and when they're pressing, when they're just sort of like taking a shot that probably nobody on the team thinks is a good shot. So all those things, they just sort of they got to go through it. They're not going to be perfect. They got to go through it. You got to point it out to them, and then they, if they're good students of the game, they'll get better at it. They will not do it overnight, but they will do it in time. And that's where you need losses probably to have that happen to you. I mean, 38 points that every one of you, Rob, probably could do and understand if you just stood in there like this or made this one extra play, right? 38 or boxed out on a free throw. Everybody can do those things, and we didn't do them. So those are the things that we're sort of learning, but it hits better after adversity.